Well, hello. My name is George DeWars, and I am the author of a little book called Getting It 8 Facts That Fuel Recovery, uh, if we face them. And I'm going to start by reading you a quote in the opening pages before even chapter 1. This tape is just going to be chapter 1, but this is a little bonus here. So there's a quote from Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, that says, "The moment we were able to accept these facts fully, our release from the alcohol compulsion had begun. This had not been done with sheer willpower. It came instead as the result of developing the willingness to accept these new facts of living." Bill published that in the Grapevine in March of 1962. And then the quote that quote opens the whole book. The quote that opens chapter 1 just says, under an illustration which was borrowed from my first book, White Knuckles and Wishful Thinking, quote, "These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first ... You fill in the blank, because this book isn't just about alcohol. It's about any addiction." And that quote was on page 23 of the AA Big Book if you want to see how it finishes. So the first chapter of 10 is called How This Book Was Written. By the way, I should mention that I'm going to record the first chapter and I'm going to record the last chapter, because the first one introduces the subject and the format, and the last chapter kind of summarizes it. So if you want to know all the conclusions, wait till I record chapter 10. In between, there's one chapter for each of the 8 facts. For that, you might have to go to Amazon. But it is on Amazon Kindle, and it's really cheap. So, how this book was written and who should read it. Winter quarter, 1968. I trudged through the quad on the University of Washington campus, wondering if patrolling a rice paddy in Vietnam would really be so much worse. Isolated, anxious, and depressed, I somehow wasn't connecting with my 40,000 fellow students. One of the few things that gave me relief was writing letters to my family and friends, who were more than 1,000 miles away. On paper, I was goofy and cheerful, articulate, and occasionally perceptive. Those faraway people even told me I made them laugh. One day, I noticed something. I was writing letters and not sending them. Eventually, a light bulb went on. Aha! I was writing because I wanted to write. Like any good realization, this one showed me what to do and gave me the willingness to do it. Long story short, I spent the last year of university learning to write short stories, and I pretty much stopped sending letters. Truck driver and author Jack Cady showed me how to take a red pencil to purple prose. He was my best professor in 4 years. Jack once told me, quote, "George, you have a knack for injecting humor into a serious situation. It will help your work sell," unquote. Of course, my college professor father used to warn me, quote, "Everyone loves a wise guy, George, and someday someone is going to break your nose," unquote. Well, they were both wrong. I never sold a single short story, and the closest I ever came to a fractured beak was the crunch of the surgeon straightening out cartilage in my nose. This book breaks down a life and death topic, the source of willingness for 12-step recovery. I want to share what I've discovered during my life's work as a psychotherapist in addiction recovery. Yep, over 4 decades now. Combined with what I have learned working those steps myself. Not quite so many decades, by the way. But I am also borrowing Rule 62 of AA, quote, Don't take yourself so damn seriously, unquote. That is why I am writing this book the way I wrote those letters in college. Chatty, and with as many one-liners and stories as my editor lets me get away with. But one of the people who reviewed the manuscript pointed out the obvious. Many readers will never have written or received a letter. It can't be a text or an email. What it resembles most is a serious but somewhat cheeky blog. This, quote, post, unquote, the one you are reading. To explain all that, one post for each of the 8 facts, and one to sum it all up. The not-so-funny truth is that few people get clean and sober and stay that way the first time. If you have tried and failed a number of times, your experience seems to be more the rule than the exception. So why don't we get it? That's in quotes. The first time. Why continue to suffer so long? Because there is more than one, quote, it, unquote, to get. In fact, there seem to be 8 specific realizations to get before you have all the willingness it takes. 8 facts to be faced, like 8 pieces of pie to be eaten. Any food must be chewed, swallowed, and digested before it becomes energy. It does not matter the sizes of the slices, the order in which you swallow them, or even which one you absorb first. It does not matter if you get some pieces on your own and some from treatment, some while using, and some only after working the program. What matters is that you get all of them before you relapse yet again. If 12-step recovery is going to work for you, it matters only that you get all you need to get in order to become willing to do the work you need to do and keep doing it. Jack Cady taught his wannabe writers, quote, show, don't tell. He was teaching fiction. And that is just exactly what I'm trying to do here. The AA Big Book urges those in recovery, when talking to a potential member, quote, show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of the spree. I know, show her too. Show him or her from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower, unquote. Both of these quotes are found on page 92 of the AA Big Book. They are instructions for making a 12-step call on someone who has yet to take step 1 of the program. While hardly a 12-step call, this book embraces the page 92 guidelines, especially the emphasis on the way 2 kinds of thinking defeat willpower. The difference? We will not just describe the, quote, mental twist, unquote. We shall identify 8 facts revealed by the 2 types of thought. These are described below. When picking up the first drink/drug/whatever you might be addicted to. First, we need to see if you have experienced either of those 2 types of thinking. So, have you ever done this? Quit drinking, drugging, whatever, for a period of time, at least hoping it was for good, only to find yourself changing your mind and, quote, deciding, unquote, to take the first drink, drug, whatever. Even more precisely, at the moment of making that decision, did you tell yourself something like, one won't hurt, or this time will be different? Perhaps, I can handle it now, or no one will know. Some people tell themselves, well, I won't go back to what I quit, but I can handle doing X instead. Maybe you thought, the doctor did prescribe it. Well, not for me, but still. Talk about a mental twist. I've been calling these wishful thinking relapses since about 1978. I'm not proud to say it took me over 20 years to notice that the AA Big Book had already labeled them, quote, casual relapses, way back in 1938. All three of the relapse stories in Chapter 3 of the Big Book, quote, more about alcoholism, unquote, are casual or wishful. Have you personally had this experience? Deciding you were done with alcohol or drugs or whatever, only to decide sometime later that you could drink or use whatever you use without pain or loss of control. And what happened? Here's something to think about. Did you change your mind? Or did it simply change, through a process outside your awareness and apparent control? Like a dimmer switch, someone else was lowering so slowly you didn't even notice. Perhaps you've never quit before, but maybe you have decided to pick up the first drink, drug, whatever, of the day or of the binge, with one of these casual relapse thoughts whispering in your mind. Maybe you would wake up in the morning and swear to quit, only to change your mind that afternoon or evening and declare, well, one won't hurt, with the usual result. And maybe you have never had any of these thoughts. You could even be relieved or dismayed to not find your own relapse thoughts here. Maybe this silly book is irrelevant and you don't need to read it. Then again, maybe you suffer from the other kind of relapse thinking when you decide to take the first drink, drug, or whatever. A different sort of twist. I refer, of course, to the, quote, the battle cry of the relapsing alcoholic addict, unquote. Two words, as emotional as they are meaningless, that announce an aggressive return to the dark side. F it. Oh, you may have been a little more polite. Perhaps you merely said, damn it, or to heck with it, or even a philosophical, oh well, with a shrug and a sigh. Just for the record, I've been calling this one the expletive relapse for about 10 years, after a couple of decades calling it the white knuckle relapse. These blogs will mostly be calling it the cursing relapse. That's what most of us do. The AA Big Book sandwiches a brief paragraph between the proverbial whiskey and milk, which is a one won't hurt relapse, and the proverb of the insane jaywalker. It describes the deliberate decision to take the first drink as, quote, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. Is that humble book not describing anyone who is bellowing, or whispering, or whining, or sobbing, F it, and reaching for the first drink, drug, whatever? Does it puzzle you, dear reader, how you may have traveled from a place of deciding to quit to such a moment of resentful futility, of saying F it and picking up the first whatever? Did you change your mind, or was it changed for you? How do you prevent this from happening again? What might you have to do? This book explores these questions, and it does so by looking at your actual experience with these two kinds of thought as you picked up the first drink, drug, whatever, wishing and cursing. But we will also explore the experience of those who used to do this and no longer do. In fact, we will look at both kinds of thinking and how each twist reveals 4 slices of the willingness pie. We will catalog what people who get it say, the ones who have swallowed each slice and received energy to do the work it requires. We will also listen to what people say who don't buy it, who choke on something that may seem both false and insulting, say. We will look at what 12-step recovery says in the writings, the meetings, the sayings, or the very setup of the program. The AA Big Book is our most important written source. It is the foundation for all the other 12-step programs, and it focuses relentlessly on the decision to take the first drink, drug, whatever. I confess to hoping I can thump some sense out of it for you. More important, we will connect each realization, each slice of the pie, to the work that it calls for, and to the 12-step tools that do the job. I mean, why go to all those meetings even long after you have been tempted to drink or drug or whatever tempts you? Why pray or meditate or read about addiction and recovery on a daily basis? Why say some corny prayer or make a phone call when you break a shoelace or when true love breaks your heart? Why seek some kind of, quote, God, unquote, when all you want to do is get your job or spouse or car keys back? Why try to help total strangers who are even more messed up than you were back in the day? Why share your darkest secrets with someone whose only credential is once being just as messed up as you are now? Usually, if we know what a tool is for, we're more likely to pick it up. This book is meant, first of all, for those who live in a kind of purgatory, between the hell of addiction of any kind and the heaven of recovery, between the time of seeing the old way doesn't work so well and the point where you see the problem clearly. So clearly you are willing to do whatever it takes, even taking the suggestions of others. The Big Book declares, this is a quote, if you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. True enough. But what if you've not made any such decision and you are not ready, quote unquote? What if you do not see something in these well-meaning people that you're burning to have? What if you've not been given what they call the gift of desperation? Quote, willing to go to any length to get it, unquote. Right this moment, it seems important for both me and you, dear reader, well, you're not a reader right now, to be crystal clear about the difference between what the AA Big Book means by the it in their get it and what this book of letters means by the it in the title, getting it. The original 1938 text mainly refers to what active members already have after working the program. Sobriety, serenity, and fellowship, for starters. If you have any sense of those things and a hunger to have them for yourself, you already have the willingness to do that work. But I am emphatically not referring to the it that comes after working the program. I am sharing what I've learned about willingness itself, which has to already be there before you can, quote, decide you want what we have, unquote. 8 facts to be faced before doing the work will even make sense to you. Uh-oh. I feel a story coming on. 1993. Out of 7 decades, out of 7 decades, it was the most painful day of my life. My second ex-wife was making the final stroke of the axe to amputate me from her life. Color me bewildered and devastated. A psychotherapist, licensed for 11 years, a faithful long-term therapy client myself, the author of a new book, not this one, and the member of a 12-step program. I had pleaded with her to go to counseling. Her response to me, you are living proof that what you do does not work. If I were glass, color me shattered. Fortunately, I had just enough recovery to see where she was right. My feeble half measures to work the steps had left George, that's me, comfortably in charge. The pain I felt that day was really living proof that my directing the show, as we say, was not producing a happy ending. It was a wake-up call to get serious. 90 meetings in 90 days, get a sponsor, work the steps. My soon-to-be ex had served me a large slice of willingness pie. To this day, I may chuckle when life reminds me that what I do doesn't work. I woke up all right, but sometimes get caught napping. I still go to a lot of open 12-step meetings, various kinds. In about 75% of them, someone mentions the exact words, getting it. At least half the time, they are sharing the experience of going in and out of recovery until they got it that they needed to actually work the program, all of the program. What they seem to have finally gotten was willingness. These chapters offer you and anyone who would help you a way to look at your own readiness and to openly explore your experience and your feelings about each of these 8 facts. The first thing they taught me in shrink school was, quote, you gotta start where the person is, unquote. Guess what? You can't start anyplace else. The big book may include most of those 8 facts, but it does not tell you how to work with them to build the willingness you do not yet have. Have you ever tried to do something you weren't willing to do? How did that go? A word for those of you with an addiction other than alcohol. The practical question is whether you've experienced either of the 2 kinds of thinking at moments of deciding to return to active use. If you have, we have plenty of pie to go around. Those who already have the willingness to go to any length, working an active program of recovery, may get something here too. A refresher course on how step 1 actually happened for you, perhaps. You may find it strengthens your recovery to see how directly the program addresses each of these realities of addiction. And it may help you to help others, especially the, quote, in and outers, unquote. Oh, what if you are a counselor, a sponsor, a religious guide, a family member, or anyone frustrated by the relapses of another? Well, how can it hurt you for you to understand what your client or loved one does not yet see? To look through the eyes that do see, people already in recovery, and the eyes that do not see, the ones you're frustrated by, in the very same context. That moment of decision that all abstinence-based treatment tries to prevent. And can it hurt to understand how 12-step recovery tackles these 8 realities once they are seen, even if you use a different approach? You may even see how 12-step practices sync up with what you do. On the other hand, if you are 12-step based but share your client's frustration with not getting it, this skinny little book may offer you, both of you, some helpful questions and even some answers. In effect, the AA Big Book itself answers one crucial question. How do we stop this cycle of deciding to quit, quitting for a while, and then making that, quote, insane, unquote, decision to start again? At one point, the authors lament, quote, this is the baffling feature of alcoholism, this utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish, unquote. To answer their central question, they return again and again to, quote, the queer mental conditions surrounding the first drink, unquote. This book, see if I can hold it up without messing this up too much. This book, oh, there it is. Anyway, this book organizes what they found there. 8 realities of relapse. 4 facts revealed by the casual relapse, the one I call wishful thinking, and 4 facts exposed by the deliberate relapse, the one I call expletive or cursing. The good news? Each fact also comes with the energy to do the work it demands. If we face it. So that's how chapter 1 ends. There's a reference here to where the formal name of the AA Big Book and a copy of the 12 Steps. I don't feel like you probably need me to read those. Let's see what else is here. Just the end of the 12 Steps. It's time for me to log off and let you absorb what I've just said. Thank you.